Tonight on Sai's Eyes on the Skies.
Lately it's been warm in the afternoons and cold and nice and cool and cold in the evenings and nights. I'll let you know what to expect in the next couple days.
Plus, Trey Fulbright has a look at your national weather forecast. Sai's Eyes on the Skies for Thursday, November 5th starts right now.
Live from Studio 171 in Ames, Iowa, the Iowa State Meteorology Department team of meteorologists brings you the latest weather from around the country and out your front door. Iowa State's longest-running television program and the only live weather broadcast on campus starts right now. This is Sai's Eyes on the Skies.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Sai's Eyes on the Skies. I'm your host, Trevor Roubadeaux. It's time for this day in weather history. This day in 1894, over 100 years ago, a significant snowstorm impacted New England. It formed off the coast of New Jersey and swept through East Connecticut with increasing heavy rain and snowfall along with high winds. The heavy snow and high winds caused significant damage to trees and brought down telephone poles by hundreds. The telegraph and telephone service in southern New England was crippled, and the fallen poles and trees delayed railroad services. Up next, Trey Fulbright has a look at your national weather forecast. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Sai's Eyes on the Skies. Let's take a look now at your national forecast. We're going to begin with a look at the weather headlines for this week. A look at the weather headlines. We've got warm conditions basically across much of the central and eastern U.S. That's going to be followed by an active pattern eventually that will begin to set up for you folks across the western U.S. We're going to go in more detail on that here in just a moment. And then that active weather across the western U.S. that we're going to see build in later this week, that will eventually translate to much of the central and eastern U.S. as we get into next week. So a lot of active weather. It's been quiet lately, but things are about to change here, as you can see here in the upcoming outlook. Let's take a look now at the tropical activity. We are still going on this very active hurricane season. What we're looking at right now is Tropical Depression Eta. Earlier in the week, this was a major hurricane that made landfall in Nicaragua, a Category 4 storm. Now that system is currently moving inland, and now you can see it is downgraded to a tropical depression, still producing a lot of heavy rainfall and a lot of flooding issues. But what we're going to eventually see happen with that system is that it will eventually turn up to the northeast and then move back to the northeast into the Caribbean Sea, strengthening into a tropical storm. The waters in this area are definitely warm. Upper level winds are weak, so that's going to allow this thing to reorganize. And then eventually this thing could come up toward Florida as we get into early next week, later this weekend and early next week. So we're going to have to watch that very closely there for you folks across the southeastern portions of Florida. Meanwhile, besides the tropics, the other big story that we are dealing with has been our persistent drought. You can see a look at the drought monitor right now. Things do not look good here across much of the central and western U.S. And you can really see the areas getting hit hard right now include the desert southwest. That expanse of red and that dark red represent where we have the extreme and exceptional drought conditions occurring. So we could definitely use some rainfall in this area. And the good news is, at least in the short term, we've got a pattern change coming up in the upper levels of the atmosphere that could help us out. A look at temperatures right now across the nation. You can see we've got 60s and 50s up in the northeast, and then look at all the 60s and then the 70s down into the deep south, even 80 right now in San Antonio. So we've got a lot of warm air. We've got an upper level ridge in place, and so that is promoting sinking stable air, and that sinking stable air, as it compresses, it warms up, and so that's why we're seeing a lot of above average temperatures right now across much of the nation. Here's a look at the satellite and radar picture right now. You can see we've got high pressure pretty much dominating much of the picture here, and hardly a cloud in the sky across much of the southern U.S. and into the Midwest. We are watching areas though up to the northwest and then eventually off the Pacific Northwest coast. This is where we are watching for our next upper level storm system that will be coming in as we get into early next week. This upper level disturbance will strengthen, and then as some jet stream energy rounds the base of this upper level disturbance, it will strengthen and sharpen that trough, and then that trough will move into the western U.S. as we get into next week, bringing in a lot of activity in terms of showers and thunderstorms as we get into next week. So let's take a look at that right now. And we're going to take a look at that at our national futurecast. You can clearly see here, we're going to look at the upper atmosphere first. Watch how this trough really begins to deepen here as we get into the next several days. Notice how it deepens, it heads down to the south. And so with that trough ahead of that, we get the rising air. Behind that, we get the falling temperatures and the much cooler air. And ahead of that trough, we got the rising air that will support the showers and thunderstorms that they desperately need out there across the west. Also mountain snow as well. But notice here ahead of that trough where we've got the heights rising. The heights in the atmosphere are rising. That is an indication that it will be much warmer ahead of this system. And so ahead of this, it will be very warm all the way through the weekend here across much of the central and eastern U.S. So you've got a couple more nice days before things do begin to change as we get into the early part of next week. A closer look at that right now in the National Futurecast with the clouds and radar picture, you can clearly see. Notice as that system moves on to the west coast of the U.S., we've got showers and thunderstorms that will begin to increase with that. As temperatures decrease with elevation, you've got your mountain snow there across portions of the Cascades, and then this system continues to dip down into the Great Basin. Meanwhile, across much of the central and eastern U.S., Friday and Saturday look pretty good, above average temperatures with that mostly sunny skies. And then we're also looking at some of the tropical activity. Remember, we're looking at Ada down to the southeast. That could bring a couple areas of scattered showers and thunderstorms as we get into the early part of next week. So here's a look now at my select city forecast. This is for St. Louis, Missouri. Over the next several days, we've got the warm temperatures that will continue to dominate through the early part of next week. And then Monday, that is when we begin to see the changes arrive there with scattered showers and thunderstorms, and then turning much cooler as we get into the end of next week.
Thank you, Trey, for that national forecast. Now, let's have a look at today's weather trivia question. What is the atmospheric layer where most weather occurs? Is it A, stratosphere, B, troposphere, C, thermosphere, or D, mesosphere? We'll have the answers to that coming right up, but first, Benji Wyberg has a look at your Iowa forecast.
Thanks, Trevor. Now let's take a look at current conditions here in Ames. It is currently 50 degrees, calm winds, only 8 miles an hour, and still feels like 50 degrees. If we zoom it out to the entire state, pretty much mid to upper 50s for much of the state, 60s in some locations, 68 is our warmest spot in Council Bluffs, and we got 57 in Cedar Rapids and 61 in Davenport. As we move on to our satellite and radar, we got this high pressure system sitting over our Midwest region, and that is keeping our skies very clear right now. We got a couple clouds kind of surrounding the Midwest, but Iowa is pretty much staying clear throughout the evening. If we look at our upper atmosphere, we got this trough pattern around the western portion of the country. We got Portland and San Francisco having that trough pattern, which brings in cool and stormy conditions, where we're kind of sitting in a ridge pattern, which brings in very warm and mostly clear conditions. But that'll change as the trough kind of moves on, and we will actually get some effect of this trough coming over into the weekend. If we look at our future satellite and radar, it is pretty much very clear over the next couple days. We might get a few clouds here and there Saturday morning, but primarily nothing too much to worry about into the day. Saturday, it's going to pretty much clear up after the morning. As we continue on to our future wind, it is very calm currently, and it will be calm tomorrow. But tomorrow will be calm this evening, but tomorrow morning is when the winds start to pick up. If we look at, as the future wind keeps going, we will look at winds actually intensifying. And that's going to be a bit worrisome for our football players this Saturday who are playing. We got 20 miles an hour plus for anywhere west of Ames, Des Moines, and basically I-35. If you're west of I-35, expect a 20 mile an hour plus wind. But the eastern half of the state doesn't really catch a break. We got 12 is our calmest spot in Burlington, but it is going to be mid to upper teens for much of the eastern half of the state. If you look at our game day forecast, like I mentioned earlier, we are playing, Iowa State is playing against Baylor this Saturday. Kickoff's at 6 p.m. It is going to be clear skies, so we don't have to worry about any rain or snow or anything, but wind is going to be a huge factor. We'll have to see how that impacts the kickers at the game on Saturday. 6 p.m. kickoff, 62 degrees and 50 for a low as we're leaving the game. Forecast highs for tomorrow, pretty much mid to upper 70s for much of the state. As we continue on to tonight, though, we got 41 degrees. It's going to be a very clear night, super calm. Into tomorrow, like I mentioned, 75 degrees here in Ames. Southerly wind keeping us warm, but it is 15 miles an hour. So so that breeze starts to pick up tomorrow, and it will really intensify on Saturday. If we look at our extended forecast, Friday, Saturday, Sunday is going to be breezy this weekend. Monday and Tuesday we got a little bit of chance of precip with that trough coming in, and much cooler temperatures as we start next week.
Thank you, Benji, for that Iowa forecast. Now, let's have a look at our weather trivia question and answer. What is the atmospheric layer where most weather occurs? A. Stratosphere, B. Troposphere, C. Thermosphere, and D. Mesosphere. The correct answer to today's trivia question was B. Troposphere. We'd like to thank everyone who participated on our trivia poll on Twitter, and it looks like 100% of you got this question correct. Nice job. That'll be it for this edition of Size Eyes on the Skies. We'd like to thank each and every single one of you for joining us here tonight, and we'd hope to see you again next Tuesday. Be sure to like us on our social media pages, Twitter, Facebook, and even YouTube. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Good night.